We have to start right now with the news that literally just came in. It's breaking late, and honestly, it is the kind of headline that just stops you dead in your tracks.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge shock.
Right. Chuck Norris, the absolute legend, the martial artist who basically defined an entire era of television as Walker, Texas Ranger, has passed away at the age of 86.
Yeah.
It's just a cultural shockwave. Like,
Yeah.
no matter who you are or, what decade you grew up in, you know that name.
Oh, for sure. You know the roundhouse kicks.
Exactly.
Right.
The sheer, almost invincible, mythical status the man achieved in the cultural consciousness.
Yeah, and when a figure of that magnitude passes, it really forces this collective pause, It's a massive disruption in the cultural atmosphere.
It really is. And that pause is exactly what we're leaning into today, because Chuck Norris passing at 86 is obviously a monumental headline.
Yeah.
But if you look at the legacy reports from this exact same week, so the third week of March 2026,
Yeah.
you realize something wild.
Right, the broader picture.
Yeah. While we were all looking at the falling massive oak tree of Walker, Texas Ranger, an entire ecosystem of, unsung geniuses who literally built our modern world quietly left the stage too.
It's so true.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to look at the space around that falling tree.
Yeah.
We're going to race through the legacy reports from this specific week to find out who actually built the soundtrack, the structures, and the science of the world you are walking around in today.
I love that because that ecosystem approach is really the only way to understand history. I mean, a culture isn't just its biggest stars.
Boy.
It's this complex machine driven by architects in the background. And if we look at the musical foundations that shifted this week, the sheer variety is just staggering.
The variety is insane. First off, we lost DJ Lord Sear at the age of 52. And if you know 90s hip-hop, you know he was a total fixture on the legendary Stretch Armstrong and Boboto show in New York.
Oh, yeah. An absolute staple.
He launched Biggie Smalls, Jay-Z, the Fugees. He toured with Eminem and even voiced characters in Grand Theft Auto. But wait, I want to push back on something you just said.
Okay, sure.
You call these people architects. But how does a radio DJ build architecture? I mean, aren't they just playing other people's music?
Well, it's a super common misconception. But in the 1990s, before streaming algorithms, curated our tastes for us, college radio was a physical bottleneck.
Oh, like a literal gatekeeper.
Exactly. DJ Lord Sear wasn't just pressing play, he was constructing the literal pathways for distribution. What's fascinating here is that he engineered the sound of those late-night broadcasts, cutting the physical mixtapes that people would then record on cassettes and pass around the city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he built the sonic infrastructure that allowed an unknown kid named Christopher Wallace to eventually become the notorious B.I.G. He created the gravitational pull, right, that brought underground sounds into the mainstream orbit.
Okay, that makes total sense. He was building the distribution roads, and while he was doing that for hip-hop in New York, you had Phil Campbell laying down the pavement for heavy metal.
Right.
He passed away this week at 64. He spent over 30 years as the guitarist for Motorhead, joining back in 1984.
30 years in Motorhead is no joke.
Right. 30 straight years of shredding, touring, and surviving one of the loudest bands on earth. And then he eventually formed a band with his own sons.
Yeah, and if you look at the exact same week, the architecture of American roots music lost a massive pillar, too, in Augie Myers, who passed at 85.
Oh, man, Augie Myers.
Yeah, he was a founding member of the Sir Douglas Quintet. They gave us that 1964 hit, She's About a Mover. But his real architectural moment was founding the Texas Tornadoes alongside Freddie Fender, Flaco Jimenez, and Doug Somm.
The ultimate Tejano supergroup.
Precisely. And the mechanism of his influence was synthesis. He took the syncopated rhythms of traditional Mexican border music.
Driven by the accordion, right?
Exactly, the accordion. And he layered it with this driving garage rock sound of his Vox Continental organ. He didn't just play in a band. He physically fused two entirely different cultural sounds together to define a genre that really didn't even have a name yet.
Wow.
He built a completely new room for musicians to live in.
And we even saw that same foundational building across the ocean, too. Dolores Keane died at 72 in Ireland. She was a founding member of Danann, and she anchored traditional Irish folk music with this incredibly deep, rich, melodic voice.
Oh, her voice was incredible.
It was. She took these local generational songs like The Rambling Irishman and gave them such weight that it allowed her to collaborate with global legends like
Yes.
John Prine and Emmylou Harris.
It's just the perfect representation of how cultural ecosystems function. I mean, you have the kingmaker of New York hip-hop, the 30-year engine of British heavy metal, the pioneer of Texas border music, and the voice of Irish folk all leaving the stage simultaneously.
It's wild when you put it like that. Those are the people who built the rooms we listen in. But there's a whole other layer to this ecosystem, right? The people who built the narrative we watch and read.
Yes, the storytellers.
Exactly. We saw actors who gave a face to entire eras, like Jane Lapater, who died in '81. She brought Edith Piaf to life on stage, won a Tony and an Olivier Award, and anchored modern prestige TV like The Crown and Downton Abbey.
Huge cultural touchstones.
Right. And Judy Pace passed at 83. She basically defined the 60s and 70s television landscape in Peyton Place and Brian's Song. And Matt Clark, dead at 89, who was the face of the classic cinematic Western.
Oh, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Yeah, though I feel like a lot of you listening probably just know him as Chester the Bartender in Back to the Future Part 3.
Honestly, yeah. But those actors, they provide the visual shorthand for an era. They define masculinity, femininity, tension, and comfort on screen. But the really fascinating work happens when you look at the storytellers operating outside the camera frame.
The ones manipulating the narratives.
Right, the ones who deliberately manipulate those cultural narratives to change everyday behavior.
Which takes us straight to Len Deighton, who died at 97. Now, Deighton was a Royal Air Force veteran who wrote these incredibly tense, legendary Cold War spy novels.
The Ipcress File, right?
Yes. His debut, The Ipcress File, is an absolute classic. It was adapted into a movie starring Michael Caine. He practically defined a certain brand of stoic, mid-century masculinity. But here's where it gets really interesting. He was also famous for writing cookbooks.
Which is such a pivot.
Right, specifically cookbooks aimed at men, where he invented what he called cook strips.
The cook strips are just a brilliant piece of behavioral engineering.
I am trying to picture this, honestly, writing these intense Cold War spy novels and then drawing comic strips to teach men how to cook. It feels like, I don't know, James Bond pausing a high-speed car chase to give you a really great quiche recipe.
That's exactly what it feels like.
So how did a cook strip actually work?
Well, they were literal storyboards. Dayton recognized that in the 1960s, a lot of men were just utterly intimidated by the kitchen.
Sure, because of the gender norms back then.
Exactly. The norms dictated that men didn't cook, and standard French cookbooks were dense, text-heavy, and frankly super alienating to them. So Dayton used a visual medium men were already comfortable reading the comic strip.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. Instead of paragraphs of instructions, he drew a panel of an egg cracking, an arrow pointing to a whisk, and then another arrow pointing to a hot skillet.
It's like action-oriented cooking, like assembling an engine or following a tactical map.
Exactly. He bypassed the cultural friction entirely. He changed the narrative of domesticity for an entire generation of men simply by changing the instruction manual's format.
Changing the format to bypass cultural friction. That's a perfect way to describe Ernie Anastos, too. He died of pneumonia at 82.
Oh, Ernie, a New York legend.
A total legend. He spent decades as a staple evening news anchor in New York City across massive stations like WABC and WCBS. But his real legacy project was a nationally syndicated radio program called Positively Ernie.
Right.
In a daily news cycle optimized entirely for outrage and fear, Anastos made the deliberate choice to dedicate his platform exclusively to reporting good news.
Because if you think about the mechanics of the news industry, it's a system built to reward cynicism. Fear drives engagement, right?
100%.
Anastos recognized that algorithmic and editorial friction, and he consciously chose to rewire how his audience consumed information about their own communities. He injected optimism into a very cynical machine.
Okay, let's unpack this idea of rewiring machines, because that leads us straight to the people who dedicated their lives to mapping the actual fundamental systems of our physical universe, the literal geniuses.
The heavy hitters.
Yeah. Sir Anthony Leggett died at 87 at his home in Urbana, Illinois. He won the 2003 Nobel Prize in Physics for groundbreaking work in superconductivity and superfluidity. Now, I just stop right here. I hear superconductivity, and my brain immediately pictures, like a floating bullet train. I hear superfluidity, and I'm picturing water that somehow defies gravity. What was he actually doing?
Well, honestly, you aren't far off.
Wait, really?
Yeah, superfluidity literally involves cooling a liquid, like helium, so close to absolute zero that it loses all internal friction. It can literally creep up the sides of a glass and defy gravity because the atoms just stop bumping into each other.
That is mind-blowing.
But his Nobel work focused on the quantum mechanics of these states. Think of a normal electrical wire like a crowded hallway. Okay. When electrons move through it, they bump into atoms, creating heat and losing energy. That is electrical resistance.
Okay, so that's why my laptop gets hot when I use it.
Precisely. Leggett mapped the mathematics of how, under extreme conditions, those electrons suddenly pair up and coordinate their movements. They glide through the crowded hallway with zero resistance.
Wow.
It is the entire foundation for MRI machines, particle accelerators, and really the future of quantum computing. He was mapping the absolute absence of physical friction.
Incredible. And in that same week, we lost someone mapping the friction of human behavior. Christopher Sims died at 83.
Ah, yes, the economist.
Yeah, he was a Nobel laureate in economics, teaching at Princeton, Harvard, and Yale. And for you listening right now, dealing with today's wild inflation every time you scan a carton of eggs at the grocery store, did you know guys like Christopher Sims dedicated decades of intense mathematical focus to mapping exactly how that invisible economic weather system works?
It's vital work. Economics is notoriously difficult because you cannot run controlled experiments. You can't just put the U.S. economy in a petri dish.
Right, you can't isolate it.
Exactly. Sims won the 2011 Nobel for developing a statistical tool called vector autoregression.
Okay, you're going to have to translate that for me.
Basically, it's a way to track a single domino falling in a massive room of falling dominoes. If a central bank raises interest rates today, how much of the inflation drop a year from now is because of that specific rate hike versus, say, global oil prices or a sudden change in consumer panic?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Sims built the mathematical model that allowed governments to isolate those variables and see the actual cause and effect of their monetary policies.
So Leggett mapped the flow of energy, and Sims mapped the flow of money, both looking for the invisible laws that govern how things move.
Exactly.
But that brings us to the changemakers who fought friction on a deeply human level. Kiki Shepard passed away at 74. We all know her as the longtime co-host of Showtime at the Apollo, bringing that incredible energy. But her real legacy is the KIS Foundation, fighting sickle cell disease relentlessly.
Right. She utilized her cultural platform to build an actual public health infrastructure.
And speaking of building infrastructure, that brings us to Reverend John M. Perkins, who died at 95. He was a U.S. Army veteran of the Korean War, but his life's defining work was as a civil rights activist and Christian leader.
Yeah.
He didn't just preach, he founded the Christian Community Development Association.
And the mechanism of Perkins's work is so vital to understand here. He recognized that traditional charity often just temporarily treats the symptoms of poverty.
Right, it's a Band-Aid.
Exactly. His model required leaders to actually relocate and live within the marginalized neighborhoods they were trying to help. They built health clinics, legal aid centers, and housing cooperatives from the inside out. He engineered a systemic network designed to keep resources circulating within a community rather than bleeding out of it.
It is amazing to step back and look at these two men. You have a Nobel laureate mapping the physics of superconductivity in a lab, and a civil rights leader building a network to eradicate poverty in the streets. Both of them looked at the systems of the world, saw where energy or resources were blocked, and spent a lifetime rewiring the circuitry so things could flow better for everyone else.
That is the very definition of a systemic legacy. You leave behind a framework, whether it's a quantum equation, a macroeconomic model, or a neighborhood coalition, that continues to function and solve problems long after you're gone.
But systemic legacy isn't reserved exclusively for those with Wikipedia pages or Nobel Prizes. And that brings us to a crucial part of this ecosystem, the unsung heroes and the vital act of remembering.
Right, the everyday people.
Yeah. Legacy is just as much about the immediate blast radius of your life on your family as it is about global recognition.
Oh, the vast majority of human history is carried forward by everyday people whose names will never appear in a textbook, but their impact on their immediate environment is absolute.
Right. And during Women's History Month this week, the obituaries were filled with these everyday legends. I read about an Illinois grandmother who painted houses, could fix nearly anything under the hood of a car, raised 5 children, collected vintage hot rods, and listened to everything from Patsy Cline to Tupac Shakur.
Oh man, what a brilliantly vivid life.
Right. Or this distinguished educator born in Texas who shattered ceilings to become the president of 2 different institutes of higher learning. Cypress College in California, and St. Augustine's University in North Carolina.
Amazing.
Or a 98-year-old great-great-grandmother from Virginia whose family described her flair for home design with the greatest compliment imaginable. They literally called her a female Frank Lloyd Wright.
Wow. Calling a matriarch the Frank Lloyd Wright of the family is a profound statement. What's fascinating here is it really speaks to the democratization of memory. She designed the spaces, both physical and emotional, where 5 generations of her family learned how to live.
That's a legacy right there.
Yeah. Designing a home that holds a family together for a century is a monumental architectural achievement in its own right.
So, what does this all mean? It means a grandmother blasting Tupac while leaning under the hood of a vintage hot rod leaves just as vital, just as colorful, and just as structurally important a thread in the human tapestry as an economist winning a Nobel Prize. It all holds the fabric together.
And society requires mechanisms to acknowledge when those threads are pulled out. This raises an important question about how we grieve collectively. We see this powerfully in the tradition of lowering flags to half-staff.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a visual disruption of the landscape. It physically pauses the machinery of government to acknowledge that the community has been fractured.
And the flags were lowered across the country this week for a staggering variety of public servants. Like, the national flags came down for 6 troops killed in a devastating plane crash in Iraq. But they were also lowered in Virginia for U.S. Army Corporal Marvin Sylvester Patton, who went missing in action during the Korean War. His remains were only just recently identified and returned home.
Bringing a corporal home after 70 years requires an immense, sustained scientific and logistical effort.
Decades of work.
Yeah. Identifying those remains is a testament to the enduring nature of a societal promise. Lowering the flag is the final delivery of that promise.
And we saw that visual disruption at the state level, too. Pennsylvania lowered flags for state police Corporal Timothy J. O'Connor Jr., who died in the line of duty, and Private First Class Christopher Lee Lopez.
Right.
Minnesota honored Deputy Fire Marshal Sean Johnson. Oregon paused for former State Senator Evel Gordley. Nevada remembered former Lieutenant Governor Sue Wagner. And South Dakota lowered flags for former state legislator Darrell Dean Shrimp.
It's a powerful statement.
It is. Lowering those flags is us looking at the empty space left behind in the local ecosystem and saying, we see what you built to keep us safe.
We also use anniversaries to measure the space left behind by cultural titans, right? This week marked 25 years since the passing of actress Ann Sothern at 92. She was a pioneer of early TV with Private Secretary.
Oh, yeah?
It's been 15 years since Country Music Hall of Famer Ferlin Husky died at 85. And 5 years since Yaphet Kotto passed at 81, leaving us with those unforgettable, grounded performances in Alien and Homicide, Life on the Street.
And the birthdays, too. This week would have been the 50th birthday of Chester Bennington, the generational voice of Linkin Park, who we lost so tragically in 2017.
Man, that one still hurts.
It really does. And it would have been the 100th birthday of comedy great Jerry Lewis. And, his legacy isn't just film. It includes raising more than $2 billion for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. $2 billion.
The sheer scale of that philanthropy brings us full circle. Every single person we've discussed today, from the globally famous actor to the local fire marshal, from the Nobel physicist to the great-great-grandmother designing her living room, they all utilized their limited time to construct something that would outlast them.
And that brings us to the end of this deep dive into the 3rd week of March 2026. It wasn't just a list of obituaries, it was a breathtaking cross-section of human capability. We looked at the founders of heavy metal Antillano, the authors rewiring gender norms with comic strips, scientists mapping the friction of the universe, and community leaders rewiring the economics of poverty.
They are the foundation of our daily lives. They built the unseen infrastructure we rely on every single day.
Which leaves the ball entirely in your court. For you, listening right now, every action you take, every problem you solve at work, every community you help build, you are actively writing your own legacy today. But before we go, I really want to leave you with something to chew on.
Right.
We just spent this entire deep dive listing incredible physical achievements. Institutions built, books printed, records pressed, billions of dollars raised, physical flags lowered in the physical wind. But what happens to all of our digital legacies?
That is the question.
100 years from now, when the servers inevitably degrade or the cloud companies go bankrupt or the storage formats change, will your photos, your emails, your equivalent of a cook strip, or an unreleased track, will any of it still exist? The people we talked about today build monuments of stone and steel and physical communities. Are we just leaving footprints in the digital sand? Think about what your digital ghost is going to say about you, if it survives at all.